It made a great turn and lunged toward me once more. Here it comes! The creature let out a mighty roar as I readied myself to aim for its soft underbelly. My plan was to dodge its charge while staying close to the creature's stomach. I could then slash upward to cut it open in one quick swing. I wasn't sure whether it would work, but I was all for trying it out. If I was damaged in the process, I would hastily make my retreat. The dark shape grew larger as it closed in on me, but I was oddly calm. It was fast, but it wasn't quite as fast as the cars and bikes back home. Add the fact that it couldn't make any fancy maneuvers, and you had what was essentially a flying freight train. Fast but predictable. This might just work. Come on! Groar! No, never mind. I had managed to dodge the wyvern's charge, but I only grazed the belly of the beast. Trying with all my might to stay calm, I had overcorrected the course of my swing out of subconscious fear. At least I knew I could hurt it now though, even if it was just a scratch. The graze gave me a chunk of my mana back, given the wyvern's high magic value. This would make it easier for me to cast my skills. A low growl emanated out of the creature. Crap, it looks pissed now. I barely scratched you, buddy. I may have made things worse for myself, seeing that the dragon was now glaring at me with resentful eyes. This may not end well. It charged at me again. I tried to get away, but alas, it hit me dead on. Ow, that's it, you oversized winged lizard! It got a good hit in, I had to admit. The lesser wyvern flicked its tail as it grazed against me, as if expecting my counterattack in a display of acrobatic flair to knock its talons on me. But I wasn't about to just float there and take it. I took advantage of the momentum from its claw striking me and charged straight into its right eye. However, gouging the eye proved to be too great an effort for my blade and the tip of it snapped. It was so worth it though. The creature roared and flailed in pain, its flight becoming erratic. Now let's see if I'm okay. I still had 2/3 of my blade left on me. It didn't hurt, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be all right after this encounter. It didn't look like I had any problems with flying either, likely thanks to my use of telekinesis. My broken shape had no apparent effect on my aerodynamics, and neither was I leaking mana from my broken blade. I was in surprisingly decent shape. I had that self-repair skill, so I wondered if that would fix me after this. It would suck if I had to remain broken though, I thought to myself. Just then, my blade began glowing and a couple millimeters of my broken cross-section had begun fusing itself. The self-repair skill was kicking in. I sighed in relief. It looked like I was going to be whole again. You're done for, you oversized lizard. Having checked to see that I was all right, I resumed my furious name-calling of the wyvern. My beautiful white blade was now cracked and in pieces, and I wasn't going to let it get away with that. I suspected it wasn't going to let me get away either. The wyvern reared up resentfully and launched itself toward me again, set on destroying me for the injury I had dealt it. It was slightly slower, but it was still faster than I was by far. Bring it on! I had made peace with the fact that my broken blade was going to make my life difficult, but I had steeled myself. I was ready to lose one battle to win the war against this thing. First, I slowed myself down, deliberately allowing the flying lizard to gain on me. Having tricked it into thinking I was limping away, it charged in a straight line toward me. Ha! You fell for it, you winged bastard! I pivoted, aimed my blade at its wings, accelerated, and was rewarded with a body blow. The wyvern couldn't dodge my attack with how fast it was going, and we rammed into each other. Only 1/10 of my blade remained after the crash, most of it shattered by the smash. But the lesser wyvern wasn't doing so great either. I had cut its left wing clean off its base, and it was now hurtling toward the ground. We were about 30 meters in the air, and I figured that wasn't going to be enough to finish off a lesser dragon. But as I approached the lesser wyvern, I found that its neck was bent at an odd angle and was now sputtering copious amounts of blood from its mouth. The creature was in its death throes, and it was only a matter of time until it ceased moving entirely. Phew, I survived that encounter somehow. My durability counter was at 23 now. That was too close for comfort. I wouldn't have survived if I had taken more damage from the first hit. Well, it's a good thing I won. But how do I go about getting your crystal? Digging out my hard-earned prize was going to prove difficult with only 1/10 of a blade. Considering how long it took for self-repair to work, it was probably going to take more than a night to get back to my original shape. In the meantime, the corpse of the lesser wyvern might not be safe from the scavengers wandering the grasslands at night. What do I do now? I felt a bond forming between my broken pieces thanks to my self-repair skill. Maybe I focused my energy and visualized self-repair energy flooding my blade in the hopes it would speed things up. Granted, it was a silly speculation, but what's this? My blade was now glowing brighter. This might just work. Focusing my energy made the self-repair skill work faster. This was quite the discovery. It meant that increased focus during the casting of other skills may increase the effectiveness of those skills. On the flip side, I was now consuming mana at a rate of 1 MP per second. My mana consumption wasn't without merit, however. when I had recovered the entirety of my blade in about 3 minutes' time. I had 15 MP left by the end of my repair. I wouldn't have had enough if I hadn't drained mana from the lesser wyvern during our fight. I learned a lot from that fight. Now I had enough blades to carve myself a crystal. The lesser wyvern's crystal was in its neck. I should have aimed at this spot instead, and was worth 20 points, indicative of how hard the fight against it was. I guess I'll find a bush to hide myself in for the rest of the night. It was the morning after I defeated the lesser wyvern. I was hovering in the air trying to locate my pedestal. It was a bright day, and the increased visibility aided me in locating my home. I spotted it eventually, much farther away than I had thought. I must have gotten turned around the other night and went in the opposite direction. And away we go! I launched myself in the direction of my pedestal. I took down some weak monsters who were unfortunate enough to be caught in my flight path, and had a hearty breakfast of crystals. The fight with the wyvern last night strengthened me to the point where the weaker monsters had become little more than trash mobs. I noticed monsters grew stronger the further away I went from the pedestal, and weaker the closer I was to it. It might have something to do with the magic emitted by the pedestal. Perhaps it made a barrier of some sort. Incidentally, I only noticed this barrier ever since I began using magic. I didn't know who put it up, but I speculated that it might have been my creator. It took a little under an hour to reach the pedestal I called home. Flying in a straight line helped, and it was a lot easier to navigate now that it was light out. I was only away for a night, but I had already begun feeling homesick. As I drew closer to the pedestal, the warm magic of the barrier welcomed me home. "I'm back, pedestal!" "Did you miss me?" I dove into it and sheathed myself with a plop. Resting within the pedestal was comfortable beyond belief. Home sweet pedestal. I can finally kick back and relax. I spent a few minutes just staring at the clouds as they went by. Then it was time for entertainment. Mwahaha! I finally have it! I have ceased to be a mere sword. It was time for some magic. I had gotten fire magic off a goblin mage during my goblin slaughter the other day, and I couldn't wait to try it out. Let's just equip it real quick. And we're set. I concentrated on casting it. I was no stranger to using my skills, so I was curious as to how a spell would work, if at all. My initial results were disappointing, to say the least. It doesn't look like it's doing anything. I had cast the spell, but nothing came of it. Though, it didn't feel like I had failed to cast the spell either. What gives? Do I not have enough magic? I'm pretty sure that Goblin Mage had less magic than I do, though. I'll try equipping all of the mage's skills for now. I equipped Mineralogy, Command, Staff Mastery, Battle Staff, Fire Magic Up, Small, and Mana Manipulation to start. Suddenly, some new images came into view. Fire Arrow and Fire Shield. I picked Fire Arrow because if I was going to use any magic at all, then it had to be offensive magic. Whoa, there's an actual incantation in my head now. I began reading the incantation, and my blade glowed by the time I finished. Fire Arrow! An arrow made of flames shot out of me when I said the magic words. It flew off into the distance at the speed and trajectory of an actual arrow. Whoa, it worked! Ha 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 ha! I did it! The fire arrow only singed the grass it flew over. If we were talking about pure damage, then flinging myself at an incoming enemy would have been 100 times more effective. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I was now able to use magic. Alright, let's try this one next. Fire Shield! A small flaming buckler projected itself in front of me. I wonder how strong it is. I picked up some rocks with telekinesis and began flinging it at the shield. Nothing too powerful. I was only tossing them at the speed a baseball pitcher would throw a ball. It took the first rock without any problems but began wavering by the third. That's about it, I guess. The shield was good for 3 hits, after which it dissipated. It was going to suffice for any projectiles, but I was doubtful about putting it up against swords and axes. For now, I was content playing around with these 2 spells. I had more than enough mana to spare after my rank up, and they both only cost 5 MP to cast. I enjoyed myself, casting one spell after another. Fire Arrow! Fire Arrow! Woohoo! 30 minutes went by before I started coming down from my high. The surrounding shrubbery appeared to have been on fire, but that could have been my imagination. Phew. Speaking of, I should look into my skills. Specifically, I wanted to know which skills I needed to equip to cast magic. I began by unequipping the 2 skills which obviously had nothing to do with magic, Mineralogy and Command. With Staff Mastery, Battle Staff, Fire Magic Up, Small, and Mana Manipulation still equipped, I cast Fire Arrow again. That worked. I then unequipped Staff Mastery and Battle Staff, Fire Arrow. No problems there. I unequipped Fire Magic Up, Small, and found I was still able to cast magic. This time, I unequipped Mana Manipulation so that Fire Magic was the only magic-related skill I had equipped. Nope. I re-equipped Mana Manipulation, Fire arrow. Whoosh. It looked like I was going to need mana manipulation to use any magic at all, so I may as well just leave it equipped at all times. Which brought my attention to another skill with a similar name, spirit manipulation. If mana manipulation is for magic, what's spirit manipulation for? The skills the Goblin King had were as follows: Intimidate, Sword Arts, Sword Mastery, Command, Morale Boost, Shield Mastery, Provoke, Throwing Weapons, and Vigor. Was spirit manipulation for Sword Mastery? Or maybe it was for this new skill called Sword Arts. After some time experimenting with my skill sets, I figured out that spirit manipulation indeed went with Sword Arts. I was able to expend spirit to unleash devastating attacks called Sword Arts. There was the double slash, which allowed me to attack twice, and the heavy slash, which was a devastating strike sure to kill most enemies. They looked intriguing. I can't wait to try them out on a moving target. I could hunt tougher monsters with all these new skills. I'd be able to expand my hunting grounds as well. I've already taken care of the goblin situation, so I guess I'll try venturing farther out. 4 days had gone by since I first learned fire magic. The local monsters had begun fearing me as the murderous magic sword, and some even took the initiative to destroy me.